Hey everyone, welcome back to another live. As you guys know, we go live now Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time and Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So I appreciate anyone who is joining us on these live conversations around real estate. It's always great to have you guys join me in chat. As always, before I go live, I want to make sure I am live in case no one joins us today. That way, it'll at least be on the replay for anybody to catch it. Also, comment below if need be. So let's just make sure I'm live. All right, so I am live. Oh, hey, what's going on? Impress you florals, Jaren. Thank you for joining us tonight. So if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you can hit that like button, I always forget to tell people to hit that thumbs up because it helps to push us more through the algorithm. And if this information is helpful and other people need to hear it, don't forget to hit that share button. And if you're watching this video on the replay and the hype button is available, please hype the video. That is something new YouTube is doing to kind of push us through the algorithm some more. Also, let me know if the sound is clear enough for everybody to hear the conversation. He said, I'm live, okay. Hey, Dad, my dad is here. Jaren said, hey, Dad. All right, so tonight we are going to talk about a couple things. I kind of mentioned it on the last live in regards to Trump wanting to ban institutional investors. We got to get more clarity around the ban because investors, are we banning just institutional investors? Are we banning large investors? How are we actually making sense of the ban if that is something that does take place? I am not sure it will. However, some people think that it might. You guys let me know your thoughts. And we are going to jump into this article real quick in regards to this ban. And according to what the studies are saying around institutional investors or large investors, they're saying that there aren't that many large investors that have as much stake in the housing market. However, we don't know the exact number because people do, of course, hide data, hide information. So we don't know the exact number as far as these investors. We do know in certain places they are heavily populated as far as buying single family homes and kind of locking people out of the housing journey or the dream of owning a house. And one of them happened to be where I am located, which is the metro Atlanta, Georgia area. And so this news was kind of very surprising news that I was like, okay, wow. Let me see. Let me find the article. Sorry, guys. I had the articles and now I'm like, where did the article go? This is that one. Is this it right here? Oh, here it is. Right. All right. So here we go. Let me see. Let me make it bigger so you guys can see it as well. Let me know your thoughts. Like I said, the metro Atlanta area. Let me make sure you guys can see. Okay. The metro Atlanta area has a lot of institutional investors in them, corporate investors, hedge funds. Also, we have a lot of mom and pop investors. We have a bunch of people who just chance became investors. So they lived in a house as a homeowner occupier and decided that they wanted to leave or something had forced them to leave, relocated or something. And with that being said, they had to by chance become an investor. And so they decided to turn around. And since they couldn't possibly sell their house or they didn't get what they wanted from their house for their houses, they decided that they could possibly take on a second mortgage, and they decided to rent out the house that they bought, relocate it somewhere else, and put it on the market and became a happen chance, as I call them, a happen chance investor. So you have a bunch of people that are quote unquote investors now, right? But Trump, his whole call for banning was around, as you guys can see, the large. It says to ban large investors from buying homes. So again, trying to understand what does he mean by large investors, because we heard some articles come out say institutional investors, corporate investors. Now this one is stating large investors. So in the context of large, is it quantified by the amount of units you own? So if you own 1,000 plus more properties, if you own 300 plus more properties, how do we kind of break down this banning of investors? Because every article is stating it differently. And then right here, it takes it down and it actually makes it make sense. Right here, it says immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single family houses. So just got to get more clarity on what is being said so we can understand how to move through this whole these sayings that he likes to put online or put on Truth Social, and that's where they pop up at, and then they create headlines and become news articles. All right, so he said it's clear. It's clear so far. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jerry. He said it's clear so far. Cool. All right, so let's get into this article. It says President Donald Trump said the U.S. should bar large institutional investors from buying single-family homes, arguing that corporate ownership has helped push housing further out of reach for everyday Americans. He said for a very long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. It was the reward for working hard and doing the right thing. But now, because of high record inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress, the American dream is increasingly out of reach for far too many people, especially younger Americans. So one thing I don't like is as far as trying to create both different sides to why people are not, why home ownership does not exist. I don't feel like it has nothing to do with either or side. I think it has to do with everybody, right? Congress as a whole is a whole place where you have every party, right? Democrats, Republicans, independents, socialists, Green Party, all those things, the ones that are able to be in these spaces, right? So it takes us all, and so you can't fault one side, you have to fault the entirety of it all, right? And then also we just can't fault investors. We have to take accountability too, as home buyers too, that went out in the market where the interest rates were, I don't want to say imaginary interest rates, but the interest rates were manipulated, right? As far as the pandemic happened, nobody understood what was going to happen during this pandemic, and it cost for them to drive down. Though, the feds lowered everything, and people started getting 2%, 3% rates and everything on their mortgages, and they started buying, and then it became a competition. And we do know that a lot of these institutional investors, if they were in certain states, they did unfortunately help to drive up costs, because if a homeowner was trying to put in a reasonable price, reasonable contract and to purchase a house, an institutional investor might have come in and bought it cash at a higher price, offsetting it and making that difference. As far as like if you were putting in, let's say $200,000, institutional investor might come in and say, I'll buy it for $275 or $300. So it kind of took that homeowner out of the running to even try to bid against it, right? It says, it is for that reason and much more that I am immediately taking steps to ban institutional investors from buying more single-family homes, and I will be calling on Congress to codify it, believe in homes and not corporations. People live in homes, sorry, not corporations. I think we read about this last time. It says private equity giants, real estate investments, trusts, and other large institutional investors have amassed sizable portfolios of single-family rental homes over the past decade. Many have argued that these investments have reduced housing supply for would-be homeowners and helped drive up prices. Invitation Homes, which is the largest renter of single-family homes in the country, tumbled 6%. Shares of Blackstone, an investing firm that owns and rents single-family homes, dropped more than 5%. So they're basically saying the stocks, once they heard this news come out by Trump talking about banning institutional investors, these particular stocks started to tumble or drop in price per se. Private equity firm Apollo Global Management also declined 5%. The national median existing single-family home price was $426,800 in the third quarter of 2025, after hitting a record high at $435,300 in the summer. Again, this is the national median single-family home price, right? So this goes across every state. So from California, all the way from the west coast of California, all the way to the east coast of New Jersey, all the way to the bottom south of Texas, all the way to the top, going up to Nebraska or those states, Michigan, or whatever. So this is the national medium's existing sell home price. So in regards to that, the $1 million homes, all the way down to those low-end homes, the $100,000 homes, what came in the middle, what number was always appearing the most, that created that medium. So that might not be what it is in your market. So you got to be very clear and very specific as far as what your market is when it comes to the medium sales price point, the average sales price point, and understand that, because this is the national. So with the national price point, it'll make you believe that home prices are continuously going up, depending on how you interpret the data. According to the National Association of Realtors, the average rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage is currently 6.19%. According to the Mortgage Daily News Daily, Blackstone was the largest private equity owner of apartments in the U.S. with more than 230,000 units, according to data from Private Equity Stakeholder Project released last year. Blackstone in recent years have spent trillions acquiring. And so this is what I wanted to make mention to as well. And I'm going to show you a little bit of this behind the scenes in regards to in the MLS. But Blackstone also acquired TriStone Residential. And outside of that, they also acquired another entity called Home Partners of America. So if you guys don't know what Home Partners of America is, or was, I should say, Home Partners of America was similar to another product called Divvy Homes. What they did is that they bought the homes for a person. So if you wanted to do a lease to own a home, they were a program that would say, okay, we'll buy this home for you in cash, and then you'll stay in it for X amount of years. Let's just say 3 years. And in 3 years, you agree that you'll either purchase the home as far as renting it from us, and then finally purchasing it, or you can decide, you know what, I don't want this home, and I've weighed out the pros and the cons, and I realized that I don't want this home, so I'm deciding I'm going to exit. I'm going to go rent somewhere else or buy another house somewhere else, and then this home will stay here, and it'll be in the possession of Home Partners of America, or another program that we were having down here was called Divvy Homes. And so that's what Home Partners of America is. They're a lease to own program where they would buy the house, you would lease it from them, then hopefully own said house. So Blackstone also acquired them as well. And they did American Campus Communities and Air Communities. Trump did not provide details on how such a ban would be implemented. Trump said he plans to outline additional housing affordability proposals during a speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2 weeks. And then we go on and on in regards to this thing that Trump stated in regards to that ban. All right. So when it comes to, again, as far as diving into this institutional investor ban in the state of Georgia, there are about 3 big institutional companies, investors, you can say, in the Metro Atlanta area. You have, let me make sure I say it right. You have Invitation Homes, you have Partuum, Partners. I believe I'm saying it right. I always get their name wrong. And they're kind of guided throughout the Metro Atlanta area as Progress Residential. You also have Amherst as well, Amherst Holdings, and they are also guided as far as if you see anything come on the market rental-wise in Atlanta, it might say Main Street Renewal, because those are the managing partners that kind of manage over those properties that are being rented out. Progress Residential and Main Street Renewal, which I believe it's all a subsidiary under one company, just different, like I said, just different subsidiaries. So under one umbrella, but like different subsidiaries. I believe so. Hey, what's going on, David? Good afternoon or good evening, depending on, I think over where you're at. It might be the afternoon, maybe. I don't know. But thanks for joining us. So yeah, when it comes to that, you have a lot of investors, about 30% at the time. It might have gone down a little bit because some of these investors are now they're silently selling some of their properties. They're liquidating some of their assets, and what they're doing, they're reorganizing and they're strategizing, and they might be buying in different areas because it's not making sense no more. They're not making money from it. The property taxes have gone up, and as an investor, you do not get that exemption as far as those property taxes unless you're a homeowner occupier. You can then get the homestead exemption, which can help freeze a portion of those taxes. But as an investor, they don't get that particular type of incentive. So because of that, some of them is not making sense to them anymore. So some of them are actually selling said properties and kind of reorganizing those portfolios. So at one point we were about at 30% as far as investor-owned properties in the Metro Atlanta area when it came to institutional investors alone, and about about 11% of those were owned by about 3 different companies, which I just stated earlier, which was the Partuum Partners, which is Progress Residential, Amherst Holdings, which is Main Street Renewal, how they kind of identify when you see them on the MLS, and then also Invitation Homes. So those were those 3 entities that kind of sucked up a lot of those single family homes. And then you also have that out of that, the rest of that 30%, you have other percentage as far as those smaller institutions that might have less rental properties. At one point, we also had another management company kind of overseeing a institutional investor that owned a lot of properties, but they in turn, I believe their name, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like Star Trust Group or something Trust Star or something, but they in turn had their properties managed by a company called Excalibur in the Metro Atlanta area. They in turn decided year and a half ago to actually liquidate some of their properties, and they sold some of those properties off to Invitation Homes, and then some of them they actually switched over to Invitation Homes too as rentals. So Invitation Homes in turn put a portion of them into the rental pocket, and then the other portion they started selling off. So you have a lot of institutional investors in this Metro Atlanta area. So when it comes to this ban, if it was to be put in place, it could stop them from possibly buying more homes. If they're trying to sell homes right now, reorganize, maybe they won't be able to buy any other homes in these different areas in the Metro Atlanta area. However, it won't force them to sell what they already have if they're not selling. So I'm just trying to make it make sense. I wish this would have came about, in 2020 before all this madness took place. But outside of that, they called these investors into the market during the great financial crisis, right? During the crash, when the housing market was starting to tumble, when it was starting to crash, with the foreclosure wave started to take over, they asked these institutional investors, these hedge funds and everything, they bundled up these houses, they sold it to them at a certain price point to try to unload the books from the banks, because the financier is not in the space to want to sell real estate. They're in a space to make money from the sale of real estate. And at that time, they brought those investors in, particularly even in Atlanta, they brought those investors in, and now to save the housing market. And now when it happened in the pandemic, they, like I said, they lowered those rates, and those rates allowed those investors to come back in. And I wouldn't even put nothing behind it. I don't know, because I wasn't in any rooms when this took place, but I wouldn't put anything behind it that during this pandemic situation, did they go and say, hey, we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. We don't understand what's going to happen with the housing market. Will you guys be willing to buy some more properties to kind of off weight, or, make sure nothing happens as far as a tumbling housing market again? And so maybe they came back in and they decided to buy, right? We don't know. I wasn't in those spaces, but it just makes me wonder, with this whole banning of institutional investors, will it take place? Again, don't know. I don't see it taking place, but I could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball, so it might. I don't know. We don't know what conversations are being held in the back room. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you feel about the institutional investors. If you're in the Metro Atlanta area, let me know if you feel like you were stripped a possible house that you wanted because an institutional investor came in. Also, what could also happen if an institutional investor, if they do ban them from buying, what doesn't stop them from creating all these shell companies, which they already have in place? They can create other LLCs, because it depends on how the ban is kind of laid down, right? Is the ban like you can't, as an investor, you can't own more than 10 houses, 100 houses? So what if they go, because they're already doing this, what if they go and they create more shell companies for the LLC, and they just turn around and just start buying houses in those individual LLCs? Like, I'll show you right now in the MLS a property that is literally going back and forth between LLCs, and it's the same person. It's the same holder, and they're just going back and forth. I got to make it I got to make it big at a certain amount, because I can't show you the, well, can I show you this? Well, I don't know, hopefully, but it's nobody's, well, no, this is a person name. Let's get rid of this name right here. Okay. Everything else is it. Okay. All right. Let me share this on screen for you guys to see this. As far as what these institutional investors are, they've been doing this already, creating these shell companies and actually putting them in and just switching them back and forth between LLCs. So let me put this here. So you guys can see this right here on the screen in regards to like the LLCs. All right, so it's just going from one LLC to another LLC to another LLC to another one to another one to another one. So literally, what it's doing, and this is the same company. What they're doing, and that's why you see right here, sales price $2 million, sales price $4 million, because it's not a traditional sale. It's going between company to company. So that's why you have this Y here for the anomaly. I believe I'm saying it right. And it's just going back and forth. They quick claim deeded it here, then they brought it over here, then they traded here. So they're just going back and forth between their different shell companies. And now it's currently on the market for rent at $1,900. But this is what I'm scared of, because if this happens, depending on how they put the ban in place, because there's always loopholes. One thing about stuff that's structured in around the world in every country, there's people always going to find a loophole. And these companies have already found a loophole creating these shells under their big corporate umbrella. And this is what's already happening. So I don't know, as far as if they decide to ban and they put certain things in place, I need to know how will this ban be structured? Because if you just say, oh, we're banning large institutional investors, but that own more than 200 properties, well, if they start again doing these shell companies and creating these other LLCs, then they're going to possibly get around the ban to buy properties just as a different LLC, as a sole proprietor, as a a limited liability corporation, a S corp, a C corp. Well, C corp is what they already are, but it just depends on how they go about it. So as you guys can see, it's going back and forth. David said, I agree, the ban should have happened 6 years ago. Yeah, I agree. I feel like it should have been something put in place a while back, because now what's happening is because you're trying to, I always tell people you should be proactive, not reactive. A lot of what our government does sometimes is that they're reactive to a problem solved, or seen, however you guys want to say it. A problem they already saw, and whether it comes to anything, violence or things occurring per se, they seen these things already happening, and they decide, you know what, we'll just ride the wave. And then once people start knocking on the door or start screaming loud, and people start saying, this is what we need, boom, 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 it's like, okay, now let's put something in place to stop X, Y, and Z. However, the crap has already happened. The mess has already hit the fan. And so now these things that are happening, they already structure stuff accordingly to get around. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. Let me know your thoughts when it comes to institutional investors being banned. We will look at a quick, do I have this video real quick? We'll look at a video real quick in regards to this institutional ban. Let me know your thoughts. Let me take this off my screen, because like I said, I could go on and on as far as this institutional investor situation, especially in the Metro Atlanta market. So let's see. Let me share this YouTube clip real quick. So this one, I was trying to find the one where they kind of dove into the Metro Atlanta area. I don't know why I can't find it, but basically they're just stating how it's about 30% that's owned in the Metro Atlanta area when it comes to institutional investors. And then if you go into certain counties, there's a different percentage. So if you go to Henry County, which is south, you're seeing about 7.4% of those homes owned by institutional investors, and then you kind of go to different pockets. But this is just a general video in regards to the ban, the institutional buying part and the ban. I'm just talking a little bit about it.
Behind these entities.
But they do know large institutional and out-of-state investors are taking parts of the housing supply and leading to issues for renters.
There's some evidence that non-local owners for rental homes are a little bit quicker to evict people.
These out-of-state investors are making their mark in the Lucas County market.
According to the Cleveland Federal Reserve Bank, in a study that they completed, upwards of 50% of the investor purchases of single-family houses were purchased by out-of-state investors.
The president also recently proposed a 50-year mortgage in hopes of increasing.
So this in Cleveland. So when I was looking at this, they were talking about investors. Again, the way they stated, they're saying out-of-state investors. So we don't know what kind of creates a mix of that. It could be institutional investors, it could be mom and pop investors, it could be, anybody can invest if you're an out-of-state investor. So I always say, like, the nuances in the words, more clarity. But basically they're stating here in this video in regards to this ban that these out-of-state investors are also, I want to break it down more as far as institutional investors, because I see it here in a lot Metro Atlanta area, and I also see it when I hear it when I have conversation with people who are renting from them. They don't maintain the properties well. They don't come by, to power wash the house. They're not cutting the grass. They're not doing anything to maintain it. So when they do eventually decide to sell the house, typically they will sell for a lower price point because they feel like they don't want to put the work into it. They might come in, they might put a new HVAC in, they might put a new water heater in just for the sake of the person who lived in there. If it happened to break or something happened, they just want to put it in place, or just also for the sake of them saying, hey, we put a new HVAC and a new water heater in here. That way they feel like, those are some of the things in which homeowners are looking for when they step into a space, a house per se nowadays. They want to have a newer systems. And so because of that, they'll kind of put those in place, but they don't upkeep them. They don't maintain them very well. And so typically you'll see these institutional investors, when they go to list them or on the market, they will reduce said price. And that in turn is possibly, making the equity be stripped from the current homeowners or even future home sellers. Yes, David, thank you. He said, hit the like button for the stream. Yes, please hit the like button. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate the subscription. And then if you can, I know it's hard, try to, watch the videos. And even if you click on them, push the mute button and walk away, just so I can get those public views up so we can get over to making the channel fully official, because we stream here, but we're not fully official yet. So we would love to get that going. David said, I would bet the shell companies are already in place. They didn't pass the ban last year in order to give them time to form the new corporation. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the shell companies are definitely already in place. And yeah, I'm just like, that's the thing that worries me, because again, depends on how this ban is kind of carried out, as far as what does it mean to just say ban large institutional investors. I'm pretty sure they'll probably put a number on how many entities or properties, however people want to say it, they can own. So if they know they can't own X amount of properties, as far as buying it as a quote unquote institutional investor or a corporate investor, then they're just going to put these shell companies in place and they're just going to buy them that way. If you say the ban against large institutional investors can't own more than 100 homes, they're like, okay, well, we already got the shell companies in place. This company already has 50 homes that we bought. This shell already has 60 homes we bought. We'll just buy 40 more here. We'll buy 50 more here, and then we're capping. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting how they lay it out if Congress does decide to fully pass it. It says Congress needed time for them to form their new shell corporation. Yeah, they probably did. I'm pretty sure, again, I'm not in these back rooms. I don't know what's being said, but I feel like every time something makes a move or things, I feel like conversations have already been had. People know what they're trying to do. One thing that our country is good at is that they don't want anything to happen on, like, any president, any people in Congress or office. They typically don't want anything to happen on their dime. So it's like, okay, let's make sure we kind of hold this up. Let's make sure we kind of make the people feel like we're on their sides. In actuality, this is just from me, in my opinion, I don't feel like there's much people on our side. I feel like some of it, because we live in a country that's capitalist, and I don't want to get too political here, but because we live in a capitalist country, it's about the dollar, and because of that, people are putting stuff in place for their benefit. And so there are a lot of conversations being had in back rooms that we're not privy to, and they're not going to show us on TV. And then they're going to go and do what they need to do to make sure their pockets are still being filled, while feeling like the American people, you're getting some type of relief, or hoping that this particular government, whether it be the president, whether it be your local council person, whether it be your local mayor or whatever, your governor, your senator, they're going to make you feel like you won, but on the backside, they already took care of what they need to take care of to make sure they're in good standings for the people that they might have said they were paying this to, or put in place with this thing or whatever. So that's just my little TED talk. It's like, Clark, question: do you think it should be 50, 100, 500, or 1,000 for the ban if Clark was in charge? To be honest, it just because it just depends on where you're located. Like down here, I feel like no more than 50. I'm gonna be honest. Just because not only do you have institutional investors buying, like I said, you have mom and pop investors buying that are in state, that are out of state. You also have I don't know if they label hedge funds as institutional investors or not. You have those entities buying. And so I just feel like, and then like I said, you have happen chance investors, right? People who can't sell their house, but they need to move. Something happened, they're relocating, and they just happenly, like by happen chance, they become a quote unquote investor where they have another house they can't sell. So they rent it out and they take on 2 mortgages. So with that being the case, I just feel like to open up more avenues for other people to kind of get into the home buyer market and not offset price too much, that it should be a lower amount of entities that they should be able to own. Clark, if this real estate thing doesn't work out, my backup plan is opening up a daycare in Minnesota. I'm like, well, the way they over there trying to get certain daycare centers closed down with the Somalians and everything. So I'm like, I don't know all that stuff going on in Minnesota. I don't know, David. But yeah, so it'll be very interesting in regards to this ban. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed that Donald Trump as well, he called for 200 he wants the Federal Reserve. Let me see, I'll make this bigger. He wants them to buy 200 billion in mortgage-backed securities to hopefully lower those rates. Excuse me, not Fed Reserve, I'm sorry. I reframed that. Sorry, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, sorry, has instructed Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to launch a massive buying spree of mortgage-backed securities. I meant to say he wants them to buy it so he can hopefully have the feds lower the rates. That's what I was trying to say. To push mortgage rates lower, but experts are skeptical that the move will have a dramatic impact. So I'm interpreting this right here that if those rates go lower, experts are thinking that might actually, in fact, hurt the housing market by pushing up home prices. We would hope that people would learn, because we saw that happen already through this pandemic, about how quickly those prices, those rates dipping down low, caused the home prices go up as far as people bidding against each other, because they saw they could get a $500,000 house and pay, let's just say, I'm just taking a number here. I could be wrong. I know I'm wrong with the math. I'm just saying the number. Let's just say a $500,000 house might only cost them on their payment $2,000, $2,500, at a 2%, right? So they're like, wow, I'm going to go buy this, and to have this lower, I have this lower mortgage rate with this nice, beautiful, expensive house. So if they were to lower those rates again, could that foresee home prices going higher? Again, we hope people wouldn't do it, but as human beings, as we can see, history repeats itself, and we kind of fall back into similar patterns all over again. Even though we've learned already, we fall back into them again. Let me see. Hey, what's going on, Sankofa MB? How much will that potentially lower rates? I don't know how much it'll lower rates. I do know that it just depends. Really, I guess a lot of it just depends on how confident people are in the market, like buying those mortgage-backed securities. I do know, and I'm going to bring it up, that they stated right here in this article that in 2008 they did this before. Let me make this bigger. Let me see. In 2008 they did this before to bail out the housing market in regards to that, and it did lower the rates. That's when we started seeing rates in the 3s and the 4s, and they kind of stayed steady throughout the years. People were still seeing them in 2018, 2019, still possibly seeing 3s and 4s when they got their mortgage rates. So, but also they also did other things to stabilize it and try to kick the can down the road when it came to the housing market. So it says Trump said on January 8th he would have Fannie and Freddie, which have been under federal control since 2008 bailout, purchase $200 billion worth of mortgage-backed securities, MBS, which would nearly double their combined holdings and take them close to their regulatory asset cap. Says this will drive mortgage rates down. This is the hopes that it will drive mortgage rates down, monthly payments down, and make the cost of owning a home more affordable, Trump promised on his Truth Social. Again, this is something that he hopes would happen, right? David says single family homes not including apartments. So you mean single family homes as far as when it comes to the cap? Is that what you were asking me? He said my thoughts. Okay, I missed this part. My thoughts was 500 or 1,000 for the ban. Okay, so just for the single family homes, you're saying just they ban it at 500 where they can at least own up to 500. I can understand that as far as because I guess doing a little bit more, like you said, it allows them because you will have people that just want to rent, and they want to rent homes, and you got to have homes for them to rent. So, yeah, I guess that can make sense as long as it's not a bunch of institutional investors eating up the whole market with 500 to 1,000 homes. It can make sense. But if every block you turn or every subdivision you turn, and these investors are all in these subdivisions, because that's what happened down here in Metro Atlanta, and it's still happening, where you have several subdivisions where a lot of them have a large footprint of institutional investors in them, and then outside of that, you have those investors. You have the mom and pop investors. So you might end up having, it might be let's say 50 homes in that subdivision, and maybe about 30 of them are owned by investors. I just don't. So that's why I put the cap at 50, just because with me seeing it down here in this area, I capped it there. But I guess it depends on where you're at too, as far as that cap. But I can understand what you mean as far as that 500 to 1,000 ban. It says mortgage rates did respond favorably to the news, with 30-year rates dipping below 6% on Friday for the first time in nearly 3 years. So yeah, so when he did mention this, and they did this, that they said they would try to buy 200 billion in mortgage-backed securities, we did see a dip in rates. Some people are getting, quoted in the fives, the high fives, the mid fives, maybe 5.5, 5.7. But there's a lot of different things that factor into those rates. As far as getting a rate like that, right? I'm not a lender, so you do want to talk to a lender as far as those factors, but I know that it could be the credit score, it could be how much you're putting down, it could be the type of loan that you go with, FHA over conventional. It's several different factors, right? Your debt to income ratio. So you would have to talk to a lender to see where you would fall outside of, because you don't really want to buy points down. Some of them might say, well, you can buy the points down as well. I don't really like to tell people to do that because we don't know where the rates are going. So if you're in a position where you feel like you can barely afford this monthly mortgage, and then you bought it down, and then all of a sudden that becomes a struggle because something happens and you want to refinance something in the future, it could be hard because you're lower than what the current rate is. So I always tell people, you want to be able to make sure whatever rate you get, and when you get that good faith estimate as far as how much that monthly mortgage could possibly be, you want to make sure that's something that is affordable to you, even if you lose a job, even if the worst circumstances happen. Can I still afford this? Can I still go out, get a part-time job? And nowadays you can do the gig jobs, even though it's kind of hard to get those because it's so oversaturated now. But get some type of job and still make an income, and then also be able to save. So, and those times of things happening, also the maintenance on the house, right? Because we're in a more inflationary period, we have the cost of different things are more expensive than they were in the past. Maybe getting a water heater fixed back in the day might have cost you $1,500. Now it's costing you $2,500, $3,500, $5,000. To get a new water heater might cost you, depending on the gallons, and it might cost you $10,000. Back in the day, it might have cost you $5,000. So it's just, the HVAC system, the roofs, all these different things. So you just want to be mindful in regards to that. But anyway, back to this. In theory, increasing Fannie and Freddie's MBS holdings should be favorable for mortgage rates, though through the simple laws of supply and demand. Increasing demand for mortgage makes them more valuable, encouraging lenders to originate more loans at more competitive rates. So it seems like right here they care more about the lenders, about the banks making money. They're not really caring about the people, the homeowners trying to buy. Because again, if we do see a drop as far as the mortgage rates, it could possibly spring a more competitive housing market and might cause prices to go up. And especially if they don't put certain bans in place, or they don't put certain restrictions in place. And then, like I said, as people, we like to repeat history. Even though we saw this happen and we've been screaming and yelling from the top of our lungs that the housing is unaffordable, people will still go out there and they will overbid for something that they really like. And like I said, in this sense right here, maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. You guys let me know your thoughts. But it seems like they more for the banks making their money and getting you stuck in these, and with the rates to get that interest, then it seems like me as a homeowner trying to, do things. So David said that makes sense. Maybe have a lower cap in one particular market to prevent what has happened in your market. Yeah. I think probably just making it make sense in different markets. Yeah, because like I said, our market has been eaten up. And what happened down here is not outside of those institutional investors. You have the migration pattern that was coming down here. People who, are homeowner occupiers, but they have more money to spend. So they're buying stuff cash. Then you have the institutional investors buying stuff cash. So you're pricing out the locals, the people who were born in Georgia, the people who were born in these metros and these counties that they can't afford. The jobs are not paying they're not paying them any amounts that make sense salary wise to be able to afford a home at that price point. So then you start to basically mess up the local from owning because of all this price driven market with the housing going up and up and up, because we have so many people coming in and kind of manipulating the market outside of the regular locals who are from the area, who were born in the area, who always wanted to own a home since they were young, and they get priced out. And I know typically people will say, well, that's why migration happens. People move to other states. People decide, I can't afford to live here. I want a house. I'm going to move to Omaha, Nebraska. I'm going to move to Nebraska, to get something that's more affordable. But I guess the goal that I would love to see happen is that things are put in place where we can see locals be able to actually stay, if they want to stay in their home environment, to be able to stay there without having to move to create for them to afford to buy a house. That's just the goal that I would love to see happen. He said, seems like the market is heating up already. Okay, is your market heating up already? We're definitely we're seeing more houses pop up on the market. I saw a lot in the system of coming soons, houses popping up. We are seeing some people go under contract. So we'll see what happens as we approach the spring, see if it really creates a true spring market, or we'll see, of course, we'll definitely probably see more than we saw last year, but we'll see what happens. David said, yup, is in your market is speeding up. Okay, it's heating up in the kitchen. So in regards to this 200 billion buying spree, like I said, this was something that happened before. I'll bring it up real quick. In 2008, as we saw the housing market starting to go through the frenzy with that great financial crisis, the government stepped in and they bought mortgage-backed securities then as well to ease that pain, which it did in turn reduce the interest rates. As stated to Sankofa MB, I don't know how much it will reduce those rates, but during that time in 2008, it did bring those rates down. So it says right here, it says the Federal Reserve is the largest agency and mortgage-backed security investor through its large-scale asset purchase program, with holdings equaling 2.5 trillion as of October 2021. To stimulate economic growth during and after the 2008 financial crisis, the Fed bought securities, including large amounts of MBS. This increased the money supply and reduced interest rates. It says, as a matter of policy, the Fed has recently worked to draw down its holdings of the MBS and other securities from its balance sheet. So they, in turn, basically bought into it. It seems like they took up a debt in order to try to stabilize and save the housing market and an economy from seeing a shock as far as all those foreclosures coming on the market. So this did happen before. Like I said, we're in a thing of history repeating itself. It's just something else happened this time. So when that crisis happened, they put different stuff in place, different regulations in place, praying that it wouldn't happen again. And now we're seeing it in a different aspect where Trump is proposing something similar like 2008 due to the housing market again, but in a different aspect as far as how the housing market got to where it's at and trying to relieve stuff and hopefully bring affordability back into the market. However, I feel like it's just going to turn into a great crap show, because I think it comes to a point where we have to allow the market to correct. We have to allow the market to do its thing without being manipulated. As there's too many factors kind of thrown in the pot manipulating the housing market, just like how they did the same thing when they saved the airlines and they saved the banks and they saved this. And I understand we can't allow for economic crash, but we also have to allow things to play out. Sometimes, just my opinion, I feel like things need to crash so we can actually rebuild. We can start fresh. But to each his own. That's just me. I don't want to, because people be like, "Oh Lord, you said crash." But we gotta allow stuff to play out without manipulation all the time. David said, "True, yeah." In the sense of manipulating, they're manipulating the market too much. All right, now let's talk about this thing when it comes to, and also I had another thing too, because this is something else I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll jump into the mortgage 6% mortgage rates. And another thing I had to talk about too is that a lot of people are talking in regards to Jerome Powell and him being out of the chair seat at the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve, I believe it has 12 governors. It's 12 governors over in the board per se, and they all have to vote as far as when it comes to the rates and different things, and understanding the what is it, Jesus Christ, and understanding the finances, the financial part in which they play when it comes to making sure our economy can stay afloat as far as out of with the inflation and everything, or things like that. So when he is replaced, they will bring in another one. However, Jerome Powell will still be a part of the board. Unless he officially retires or unless he steps down, he'll be replaced with another chair, but he'll still be on the board. So he'll still be part of that voting party. So they still have to all vote together to go about the basis points, the rates, and all those different things. Well, the rates per se, which you get the basis points. But so just because he'll be out of that seat, it doesn't mean that he won't play a part in the voting part. He said, or arrested. Oh Lord, I hope he's not arrested. I hope he's not arrested. I hope he don't get arrested. I'm like, everybody's saying once Trump leaves the White House, he going to jail. So I don't know. I'm like, I know he's done so many things that he wasn't supposed to do, but to each his own. Don't come after me, Trump. Don't come after me. Okay, so the last article is, I was reading through it. Sorry, I meant to go back up. Is them saying now Realtor. So according to Realtor.com, at the top here, it says a milestone on the long lock-in recovery journey. Mortgage rates above 6% exceed share below 3%. So they're saying that there are more mortgage rates at 6% now than there are 3%. And we're not going to read all this because we understand that the lock-in effect and all those things like that. What I thought was kind of funny, because when I started reading into this, and then you look at the data and the lines, you're like, okay, now talk about headlines. They're basically trying to make it seem like there's more 6% mortgages than there is, and that most of the people who have those low interest rates are basically giving up their low interest rates to take on these 6% and more. But okay, right here. So this chart, I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me make it a little bit bigger. So when you look at the chart in full, it says share of mortgage rates greater than 6% exceeds share below 3%. So right here in the blue, this is the 6%. So 6% share is 21.2. The 3% share right here, lower than 3%, is 20%. It's not much of a percent, 1.2 more. But not only that, the people that have 3 to 4s are 31.5%. So it's not that many people giving up their low mortgage rates to jump into 6s or more. And then you have people, like you have a low down here as far as like 5 to 6%. It's about 10%. Right here, 4 to 5%, 17%. So yeah, if like the 6% or more exceeded the 3%, but let's be realistic. This is where most of the lock-in is at right here. Most of it is right here. It is 3 to 4%. Most people are not going to sell a house nowadays if their mortgage, especially if they bought a long time ago. If they bought a long time ago, either their mortgage is paid off, and if their mortgage is paid off, they're like, okay, if I sell this house, how can I afford to buy another house in cash because I don't want another mortgage? And then also on top of that, when I talk to people about selling a house too and buying, even when they're like, okay, I have the cash to buy another house, they start looking into the property taxes and they're like, well, my property taxes at where I'm at right now is only $3,000 a year. Over there is $7,000. Why would I want to go there? Even if I don't have a mortgage, why would I want to go buy a house over there and pay $7,000 in property taxes? And it's a lot of, it's a lot of nuances when it comes to people wanting to sell their houses. Yeah, and if you have, like I said, the 3 to 4 mortgage rate as well, and you bought a long time ago, your mortgage might only be, let's say, $600 a month, $700 a month. That's cheaper now than renting an apartment, depending on where you're at. Especially down here in the Metro Atlanta area, you can't even rent a room, which is crazy nowadays. People got renting their rooms down here for $1,000 for a room. So imagine you trying to buy a whole house and have a mortgage, right? So a lot of people are still staying still until something forces them to get out the house, whether they have to relocate, whether it's a distress situation, they lose their job, whether they're getting a divorce. There's like a lot of circumstances that kind of push people out. Now you do have some people who bought within the last couple of years, maybe like millennials or maybe some Gen Zers. They're like, I don't want a house. I bought a house just because it was a hype. It was a frenzy. I saw people buying houses. I lived the house experience. I don't want it no more. I want to give it back and I want to go rent. So you have those people willing to give up those 3%, those 4%. But the people that are a little older, those Gen Xers, those baby boomers, some of the older millennials, they're like, oh, baby, we built for this. We know how to maintain the house. We understand what comes with owning the house. We ain't going nowhere. And if they are going to move, they're trying to move. Like I said, they're trying to move and pay it in cash. They don't want no other mortgage, or if they don't have a mortgage, they don't want a mortgage. If they have a lower mortgage, they're trying to take that cash, put it into another property, and still hopefully have a similar mortgage in the same range, or if it's a little higher, but a little lower. But they're not trying to go up to the $2,000 a month, the $3,000 a month mortgages. They don't want that. And then also, I've even talked to some people too in regards to a lot of conversations around like, oh, when the baby boomers pass away, they're going to have all this real estate to sell on the market. And I'm like, well, it just depends on where you're at, and it depends on the environment you're in. Because I've talked to a lot of people in the Metro Atlanta area where if they live in the city and they renting, or they nomad and they going from house to house and they live on people's couches, let mama die, let grandmama die. These people moving into these people's houses. I went to one person's house, the aunt died, the cousin that moved in, even though they got to go to probate and everything. But people are like, this house is paid off, or this mortgage is X, Y, and Z. Why am I going to pay $1,000 here? Or if I'm going from house to house, why am I going to keep going from house to house? I could just move in this house because somebody died. So it's like, it just depends on where you're at. What I notice most of the time is that if somebody does pass away, if the person, the child or whoever lives out of state, whoever is the administrator, executor of those estates, whoever it kind of transfers to, most people will turn around. And if they're out of state, they'll be more likely to sell because they're like, okay, I have a whole other life outside of state. I have my own life, my own house. I don't want to move over there. And that's something similar that happened even with me. Like when I went to college, I was in college at the time. My mom she had a house in New Jersey. She decided that she was moving to Georgia at the time. She came to all her kids and she said, hey, would you guys like to have the house? Even though the house still had a mortgage on it, at that time, it was still an affordable quote unquote mortgage. I'm in college. I'm like, no, I'm in college. I'm not trying to take over no mortgage, no house. I don't even live in the state. That's Jersey. I'm in Pennsylvania. My little sister, my little brother was too young at the time. They can't do no mortgage. My one sister unfortunately had passed before then, and then my oldest sister, she I don't know where she's at. I think she had her own spot in Delaware. So nobody wanted to turn around and take on that. So, and that's with living circumstances. So it just depends. So I just, that whole conversation around, oh, the baby boomers die and it's going to be all this stuff coming on the market. I'm not saying it's not going to be stuff that will hit the market, but it's also local. It also depends on where you at. It depends on those circumstances, because it's people down here that they just moving in people's houses. I'm sorry, y'all. She said, Lauren, hey, what's going on, Lauren? She said, that's fact. My neighbor died and his nephew moved in with his kid. Yeah, my aunt, even though they're not supposed to do it, the grandmom died and the nephew moved in. People, and the house is paid off too. And it's like, this is what I'm saying. And so everybody's like, oh, these houses are going to pop up on the market. I don't know. It just becomes circumstantial. But I do see people who live out of states. They're not in those areas, and they're like, yeah, you can sell it because I'm not moving there. But if they live locally somewhere and they ain't got nothing and they ain't got no home, oh baby, that house ain't coming to nobody's market. Even though it should go through the whole proper channel, the probate, and to be executed correctly, these people moving in these people's houses. And they're going to find a way to keep paying the mortgage if there's a mortgage on the house. They're going to find a way to, hopefully, if the mortgage is on the house, the property taxes are probably escrowed in. If they don't have a mortgage, they're going to find a way to pay those taxes, and they're going to keep it moving. So, again, it's circumstantial. Depends on where you're at. Nonetheless, I appreciate you guys joining me on this Wednesday night. Like I said, we're aiming to do lives every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, and also 7 p.m. on Sunday Eastern time. So hopefully I'll see you back here on Sunday. We'll have more real estate conversation. Just having truth talk, opinions, nothing's factual. But if you are new to the channel and you like these conversations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it if it needs to be shared to somebody that you feel like needs to hear the information. And I will talk to y'all soon. All right, bye-bye.